All right, welcome to our weekly software supply chain security group meeting. Daniel, you've got the first item for us.
Yeah, so I'm coming into container signing fresh, and so I just have some questions about how it's supposed to kind of all work. I have an idea, but I just want to check my understanding to make sure I'm not missing anything. I did ask a few questions in one of the threads that I'll link in the doc. Um, but yeah, basically, I was just wondering from a front end perspective how we can associate the signatures with the images, and then some questions around some edge cases that I've identified.
Yeah, we are. I can answer those questions asynchronously, but we're basically going to be adding signature data to the exact same API response that's already being used to populate the tag index. But the front end work has some pretty substantial blockers related to like number two that Sam wants to discuss, which is we have to implement signature verification in GitLab first, and that's proven to be really challenging. Like it's like I don't want to say proprietary, but it's a very specific implementation, and there's no Ruby implementation for it yet.
Would you have a sample like a response from the backend, assuming that everything is in place, so that I can at least go and create the front end issues, assuming that all the work is done?
Yeah, sure, I can see about doing that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be final. I just need an idea of how like what it looks like so that I could create the issues.
Sure.
Thanks.
So a couple things. You mentioned the package registry that's not in scope. That's on our prioritized list. It's pretty far down the list. We'll want to do it eventually, but that's not in scope for this effort. Also, as we were talking about this, I'm wondering, could we maybe move a little bit more iteratively on this by first just associating the signature with the package or with the container image and then doing the verification later on? So maybe we could just, because right now it's really disjointed. You see the container image in the UI and then the signature is somewhere else completely not associated at all. Maybe we could just say like signed or not signed and not make any statement on whether or not the signature is verified to start so that at least the two show up together.
Yeah, we could totally do that. We don't have to do signature verification yet. We could just say that like this image has a signature object, like here's how you get it, or um maybe we could even show the blob, but I mean the thing is the blob could potentially be very big. So maybe we can show it if it's below a certain size.
We can start with just the signature or just the signed or not signed badge for now. And I would, in that case, that reduces the scope a lot, and I would just need to know what I should do or how I should associate the signature with the image. Because I've looked at the data coming back currently, and I can pull the digest out of the signature name, but I didn't find anything else that I could use to match it up with an image. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're actually implementing a new feature in the registry called referrers, where essentially an image can have many referrers, and it's just a list of the digest of like each other manifest that refers to this one. So it's like a foreign key, basically. And so one manifest can be related to many other manifests. And so we would just return a list of the digest. So you could individually fetch those digests and like check the manifest data for those.
Is that something that will be completed soon, or are we still or is that a while out? Basically, I'm asking if we want to prioritize getting the signed state in ASAP, or if we could wait for that to be in place first.
I think we should wait for that to be in place, but I think it'll be done in a milestone or two. And like Aaron's working on that currently. The thing is I think the Rails API that is being used to populate the data for the tag index, I think that's a different API that's on top of the registry. So there's the registry API, and then Rails has like an intermediate API between that, which is being used to return data to the front end. So we would have to update both of those first.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some prerequisites that we want to get into place first.
Okay.
In that case, for the front end issue creation, I feel like I don't have enough information yet to really estimate the work. It's not going to be a lot, I don't think. But I also can't really come up with a decent implementation plan without even seeing what the data I'd be integrating against. So is that okay with you, Sam, if I hold off on the front end issue until we get more information?
Well, is there any way, Brian, that we could create like at least the data structure or send Daniel the like an example of what we would be returning to the API so that we could unblock him on the front end?
Yes. So I will, like, I did see your comment this morning. I've been doing maintainer reviews all day, so I haven't gotten the chance to respond yet. But I did see your comment, and I'm going to plan to answer all your questions, and I can also provide sample data structures for you. I should be able to do that, by Wednesday or Friday, somewhere around then.
Okay, cool.
So would that solve things for you, Daniel, if we could at least give you that data structure for the API? Would that unblock you to be able to develop what you need to behind a feature flag? And then we could just turn that on and test it once the backend is ready?
Uh, yeah, so I can create the issues based off of like a mock API. I can even start some of the implementation. Chances are though it will change enough that I will have to basically rework the MR once the actual feature is available, and once I because there's always like things that come up and that you didn't anticipate. So I could do that. The other option is to just do it in one go once the actual data is available. Both are choices. We don't need to make a decision right now. But I can probably give a better idea once I see some of the mock data.
Okay. I would prefer to start the work in parallel now. If Brian's able to get that to you by the end of the week, then
The
I would rather us start that work and then make adjustments if we have to later on, rather than waiting to start until it's completely finalized.
The other option is that I do have the signature hash that I can get out of the name, and then I can associate that with an image. And although that's not quite the method with the digest that Brian was talking about, it will at
Mhm.
least fix the problem now without any additional backend work if that's desirable.
Yeah, I agree with Brian, what he said earlier. I would prefer to avoid that just because I think the back end work is close. And I'm a little bit worried that there could be other problems by just relying on the file name.
I
Okay.
think I think the I'm having trouble remembering, but I think the spec for the new referrals format says that you have to be able to fall back to that file name format. So, like the backend API that we're implementing is going to return all the images that are in that file name format, but it will also return the images in that have referrers. So the referred images might not necessarily always be in that name format, but you have to be able to fall back and show the ones that are in that naming format, but not using the new API.
Interesting. Would you be implementing that fallback on the back end? Or is that something that you would want to see implemented on the front end?
It would be in the back end.
Okay. Then for the front end, I think we should try to just move forward with developing against the mock API spec that Brian provides. And do that behind a feature flag. And then you're right, like if things do change, we'll have to modify it, but that way we're not creating a solution on the front end that we would end up just throwing away entirely.
Yeah, the other thing is we do have to kind of be careful about the performance aspect. I think if you want to get all the signatures, you know, you would have to make individual requests for every single like every single image that has that format, right? Also, I think we want to hide those from the index, right? So like all the signature manifests that show up in the list, we want to hide those and only show like the actual images, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then the signatures should just be, instead you should get a badge that says it's signed on the actual image itself instead. Like you should click in there if you want details about the signature.
Right. So it does feel like we should wait for the backend to be finished then, because I think just hiding stuff by name could lead to pretty undesirable behavior if somebody is like happens to be using that name format, but they're not doing it for signature signatures. That could be a really bad experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could see that starting to run into all sorts of edge case undesirable behaviors if we just did it on the front end. So yeah, let's just move forward with that mock data, like developing against that mock data for now.
Okay.
One thing, Daniel, that you'll probably want to consider is because there can be one, like it's a one-to-many relationship. And unfortunately, we didn't 100% finish the UX designs before we lost our UX designer who was on this project. So one thing to think about is how we might be able to handle that if there are 2 signatures or 5 signatures or 20 signatures. I mean, those are like really far edge cases, but we might need to adjust the designs a little bit. And if you need us to get a UX designer to help with that, let me know. But if you feel like you have a reasonable idea that seems like it would work, we could probably also just move forward with that.
Is it that is it important for the user to see all the signatures and to identify which ones were verified and which ones weren't? Or is it only important for, like, say, one of them to be valid?
If one of them is valid, that would be the most important thing, but I would still expect that there would be a way for them to like drill in, like expand out and get a full list of all the signatures and their verification status and click into the details for them individually if they wanted to.
I think we probably shouldn't worry about the validity for now.
Yeah.
One thing is that the verification framework is kind of flexible. So depending on the claims, valid might mean different things to different people. Depending on like your security policies, you could say you would be checking like certain attributes in the signature. And so it's basically up to the user to determine which ones are important.
Yeah, so for this iteration, let's do that same thing, but just don't make any statement about whether or not it's valid. Just say this image has a signature or it doesn't. And then if somebody wants to drill into that and say, oh, it actually has 20 signatures, here, let me get a list of them and I can get the details for each one. And we'll add in the validity later. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I can probably create a quick mockup and then see if it looks good. And then
Okay.
if we still have questions after that, we can either what's it called, it refine or involve a UX designer.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. Cool. Let's move on to this second one. I just wanted to raise the question and see how do we want to move forward with the whole verification task? I think we have really two main options at this point. Um, we've been exploring the option of maybe trying to convince OpenSSF to help fund a contractor who would build and test a Ruby library. I think that is a viable path. I think there's a good chance that could happen, but it also is likely to take quite a bit of time because they still would have to develop that whole Ruby library and then they would have to go put it through a full security vetting process. And all of that would even only start after the budget was approved and allocated. So, I could see that probably taking, a long time to actually happen. The other option I dropped in our Slack channel earlier today, it looks like there's some precedent for compiling a Go binary and then releasing a Ruby gem that invokes the Go binary. Maybe we could do something like that as a way of keeping it up to date. Or maybe there are other ideas, I don't know, but I just wanted to get your take on this before I go and write up a proposal for OpenSSF and put in the work to try to make that happen. Is that something we want to do? Do we want to go down a different route? What are your thoughts?
So I think the first option would be best if we're able to do that and secure the funding. One thing is, so about the proposal, they're actually not wanting to build a Ruby library. They're wanting to build bindings written in Rust that can be called from every programming language. So essentially something akin to C bindings, but written in Rust instead. And then you could use those bindings like kind of similar to OpenSSL, like almost all encryption software uses the same OpenSSL C binding. And so you could call those from Ruby or JavaScript or Python or whatever programming language you like. And then they would build the Ruby library on top of that. So this has the potential to benefit the entire ecosystem, not just us.
Okay, I didn't fully understand that nuance, but that would make it that much easier to get funding for it since it would benefit a wider audience.
Yeah.
How much work do we think it would be to compile the Go binary and release it as a Ruby gem? That option B.
So I haven't read the issue yet, but it looks like it was a proposal and they haven't actually implemented it yet. Does that sound right?
I'm not sure.
From
You
what I
might be
read,
right.
it looks like they did implement
Yeah.
it, but again, I didn't get a chance to look at it too closely.
Yeah, let me take a look real quick. We can read through it together.
Or-
But yeah, a Go Ruby FFI. This is like the same thing I was talking about the Rust binding. It's like the same thing but for Go. Um, that sounds very interesting.
Like I think near the bottom there is a comment saying closes this as completed with the merge of, and then they list 3 or 4 MRs. Yeah, that one. So that makes me think that they did something towards this.
Wow, okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so my thought was we don't know how long it's gonna take to go the route of getting this Ruby library through OpenSSF. And maybe that's the best long-term solution, but if there's something faster or easier here that we could do, it could be like a year before the OpenSSF thing is done. And so there's something here we could do in a month, for example, and I'm just throwing out time periods, but like we could do something in a month here and use that for a year and then switch over later. I don't
Okay,
know.
this doesn't look like it's a real FFI. It looks like they're calling a shell to invoke the Go binary. And yeah, this is not a real FFI. They're just shelling. So I'm kind of like, I don't know about that. The other thing is the 6, I don't know if cosine is meant to be used as a library. So even if we do this, it might not be stable. So option 1 is looking a lot better right now.
Okay. Okay, well, I will try to get something started then on option number 1. Brian, I'm probably going to need your help to add in a lot of the technical details for the proposal so I can get started with some of the business case and I can open up the initial issue, but I'll tag you in it if you can add in all of those technical details. That would be really helpful. And it looks like we have some good support for this too, like from a few different companies, who are interested in helping us through this process. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to actually get funding for it and get some help making this a reality.
Okay, that sounds good. Exciting.
All right. Well, we reached the bottom of our agenda. Is there anything else to discuss today? All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.